Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first discussion of Peril's Gate. This is the sixth book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series by Janny Wurts. When we are about halfway through this book, we'd be about halfway through the series, which is really cool. Um, we are working our way through this book approximately 100 pages at a time. Today's discussion will be for the first four chapters, which covers up to 159 pages in this paperback edition. With me, I have no swiping, Jared. uh, with me, I have the usual group of friends. Jared, would you like to start us off with introductions?
Sure. I'm Jared. I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and I do a bunch of stuff on pagechewing.com that I like to check out. So check it out. Chibi.
I'm Chibi-Po. I don't run, anything in particular. I just, pop onto Twitter and, promote these books and other books. And, I lurk around on Page Chewing, but I've been kind of busy, so I haven't really said much there lately, but I can still be found there.
Hi, I'm Matt, also known as Miggins or Hobbit Hole Books over on Twitter. I'm also on Page Two or mostly active on Twitter, and I'm also a reviewer over at Fantasy Book Critic. But yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Very nice. So, we started off pretty much where we left off in Grand Conspiracy, which I think is a first for the series, right? Usually, there's some sort of time gap between books. Is there not?
There's a decent amount of time gap. We have 5 years between Curse and Ships, and then Warhost is got a little bit of a short time period, but it's not too long. And then I don't remember, it's a couple of years between Warhost and Ships and Warhost and Fugitive Prince. And then, we saw a whole bunch of time, between across Grand Conspiracy. So
Yeah, Great Conspiracy. Yeah, right. Had like a 15-year gap.
Also, you said your copy had like 100. The 4 chapters cover like 159 pages, and
Yeah.
That's wow.
Yep.
I wonder
158.
what they did with the font, because the original paperback, mass market paperback, 184 pages.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
The font is tiny in these
It is
books.
pretty small in here. Yeah.
Mine's 132, I think.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's the hardcover though. There's more
It's the
page room.
hardcover, yeah.
Yeah. This font is among the tiniest I have read.
Yeah.
I have seen tinier, but
I think it's just as a brief thing, I think the next book is really bad about that. So you may want to look at an ebook for it, or even if you have a physical copy, because the main paperback, the newest paperback, is really, really tiny.
Oh, like this version?
Yeah.
Good. I had the big paperback for the next one.
Oh, nice.
I'm looking forward to that.
Very cool. So Fionn Addit is being mad at Arathon and slowing things down, and they find Dakar and then immediately started doing it. I think that was one of the most gripping scenes for me. Not in the book, it's too early in the book to say, but so far it has been one of the most gripping scenes, with the tension building up, with the guards coming to find them, and the duel itself. It was all very brilliantly done.
Yeah. Well, the ironic thing was that Dakar gave them that drink that kind of restored their vitality a little bit, which kind of just led to them being foolish and resuming their fighting with each other, and because they got their energy back, and so that was kind of, it was more to heal them and get them, in to give them the means to keep going, and they end up like trying to fight. I mean, Arathon didn't really have much of a challenge, so it wasn't like much for him, but it was, that was it's kind of interesting. It just showed you that Fionn was still young, and he's still, not he's not wise enough to get beyond his own emotions and his own inner turmoil.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. I think it was on 2 pages back to back. We saw from Fion's perspective that he's throwing every last stop and he's feeling really good about himself, that he's being a good swordsman. He also has a moment of confidence where he thinks he's already a really good singer and whatnot. There's no way he's so good at two things. I have him, no problem. and and then in on immediately on the next page we see Arathon is basically just playing with him.
Hmm.
And so that flippant perspective I thought was really cool too. And also I think we got a Dakar point of view where he sees that everything he's doing, he's almost mocking Fionn with how he's participating in the duel.
One of my favorite moments that, because I was really kind of closely reading it this time, was something that I hadn't noticed before. But there's this scene where early on, I think, where Arathon and Theon are hunkering down this little patch of grass and they're hiding, and somebody comes along and they're really kind of packed in tight and just gazing into one another. And Arathon just kind of goes, "Well, we kind of expected this, really." Just kind of like this moment to break the tension, is kind of very dry sort of humor. And it just really made me laugh, just imagining like Theon's pure almost hatred of Arathon, and then him having to be forced to kind of like just sit really tightly, snugly close to his enemy. And then Arathon's just like, "Well, we expected this." Just really made me laugh.
Yeah, I thought it did a really good job of illustrating that. I mean, basically, Fionn is really high on his own supply. He's just like 100%. Oh, hello. All right, now he needs to introduce himself now that he's here.
Okay. I'm Chris, Chronicle of Chris. Patreon.com, Speculative Speculations. You can find me in all those places. Rock on.
Very nice. Now you can make shots. You speak fast enough for that. Go on, TV.
Yeah, he's just, and then as it goes forward, he's just like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, he was there, witnessed all the stuff that happened at the Grand Conspiracy, and it's just like it has not sunk into him at all, even a little bit, that, this situation is anything but, a simple one. He's still like, rah, 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 you're evil, blah, 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 blah. And I am the destined hero to, who will crush you. This is my destiny. Meanwhile, Arathon's like, let's run through all the basic sword fighting patterns, shall we?
Yeah. And that was interesting too, because I mean, he sets such store by his destiny that he thinks it's his destiny to destroy the Master of Shadows, who nobody has been able to touch for over 30 years. Now it's his destiny to do it. Right? So, yeah. We were discussing the duel between Arathon and Fionn. Yes.
Yeah, so like she absolutely nails that he's just this headstrong teenager who's just huffing his own supply because like he's like, this is my destiny, I will do this. I'm like, did anyone ever actually, read the birth prophecy to you? It doesn't really say anything like that, but did he just no one talk about it to him? He's just like, you had a birth prophecy, you will do great things, blah blah blah, or something. A birth prophecy said you will be trained for the sword. And he just took that to be like, I am the destined savior of everything. It's like, wow, you've got a very large head and you have no idea about anything.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Is it possible he has all these notions just because he was treated differently from all his siblings and like pretty much everyone in the village that he lived in, because he was the only one, I think, who was trained, and they had to hire people specially to come train him. And I don't know how much he remembers what the Koryani did to him, but it's possible he interpreted that also as because he's special somehow, and so on and so forth. So he doesn't actually know the prophecy. He just has all high notions from the things that have been happening around him.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah,
just a goat.
something like that. But because he does, he does remember. We know he remembers Lorinda because he called her out, before everything got odd there. And Lorinda just kind of it's like whatever, and dismissed him. But yeah, in that fight, and then the later scene, it's just like he's just flip flopping all over the place. He's like blah 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 blah. He's like, yeah, she really nails that he's a stupid teenager who hasn't figured out who he is yet.
Yeah.
And I think Johnny does really nail these things. There was one sentence that I had that was about this description of being drunk, which I thought she really nailed. And it was, feels like your innards got packed with wet sand with river rocks jammed in your eye sockets. And I thought, I've never had anyone as brilliantly describe as what it's like to be hungover as that.
And I liked when Arathon handed back Dakar's concoction to him and said, "You can get drunk on that." Yeah. It's so bad that even Dakar doesn't want to drink it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is the fighting was still foolish, even on Arathon's part, I thought, because it did end up giving away their location to the soldiers chasing them. And so that just made life harder for all of them. And it was soon after that that Arathon had to leave Theon in Dakar's hands, which another burden for Dakar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that. Why did Arathon decide that now is the best place to hash this out and be done with? Because it had to come later, but were they looking at months before they could get to any sort of safety, and they needed to get this over with now?
Good question. Did Arathon not want Theon to go to that place? The ruins, the sacred place there. Yeah. Yeah.
But he didn't know he was going there until
stage,
Luhane made contact.
Oh,
he
right.
he was headed to one of the ships. I think they were going to go to Evanstar, then go from there to the Kittian and
try to get to Lestron and whatnot.
Oh yeah, Elstron, then the other ship.
But Arathon's been in a bit of a spiral of making like poor judgment calls. Even going to get Fionn in the first place was sort of folly in its own right, because again, they ended up sparing the life of an innocent, but between this, then having the fight so that Fionn comes around, to then having to leave Fionn and Dakar anyway, none of it really achieved anything in the big cycle of things, and actually put Arathon close to death, as it turned out, because of his own sort of foolishness and hubris.
Yeah, he's actually described as raw at one point. His emotions really stripped bare. But the thing that worries me is that he's putting this aside to focus on this escape, which is obviously the immediate danger. But then, what is pulling all these emotions inside himself going to do? That's going to come out at some point. And he's, as we've had it described, he's really raw. So these emotions, like, what's going to happen when inevitably this all comes pouring out? That's what worries me,
Interesting. Yeah.
I actually thought it was going to go down another path, because I still have this idea that with him being close to death, the hold of the Mistwraith or Destier on cursing him actually will lessen if he actually is close to death, because it's a living being and it will not die with Arathon. So actually, if he gets close to death, there might be some movement in the attachment of the curse to him. I thought that's actually the reason that this was happening, narratively speaking, is because we would get, but we didn't get any of that, of course. As usual, I had a prediction in my head and was wholly wrong, as my thing.
Oh, but that makes sense though. I do wonder what that interaction would be like if
Mm.
um I guess the mistake would do everything possible to not let the person die. Did we even see that happen before? I mean, not from illness, but from when they know they're about to be killed by someone or when they're in the way of harm. I think the mistake takes over to some extent. I seem to recall this happening, but I could be making it up. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is an
And
interesting
I
point. Yeah.
wonder how the obligation, Arathan's obligation to the Fellowship, ties into that as well, because obviously he's not in control of his own life either to that extent, because he's obviously promised by blood oath or otherwise that he will not end his own life as an easy way out of fixing the pain and suffering that he's causing.
Yeah. Yeah. It is sad that it makes him feel need to kill people over
Yeah.
it, or yeah.
Yeah. In it, somebody referred to Theon as an expendable cipher, and I forget who it was though. But that was when Theon was left in Dakar's hands. And so, when did Sethvir, well, not Sethvir, one of the sorcerers,
Luhane.
change Arathon's mind about going to the other place?
I think it was soon after he had left the safe house that Dakar had for them.
Okay.
When he
It
was
was
on,
Luhane, yeah.
he was
Right.
making his way to the mountains already.
Yeah.
I think he still had to go the same direction, but where he went from there was different.
Well, I mean, the thing too is like he forces the duel because he knows that Fion's not gonna is going to be a stupid little butt, if he doesn't go along with it and whatnot. And it's funniest through the duel is how you see how badly Fion is like misrepresenting everything when Fion's like, begin, start the trial whenever you please. And Arathan's like, oh, no. You want to do this, you're going to attack first. And Fion just completely misinterprets that, doesn't get that, what's being said there. He's like, you think I lack courage? It's like, that's not what he's saying. It had nothing to do with that. And just you realizing, and he has no idea how out of his depth he is. But, that whole thing, then explodes with the guards, the Lancers coming in, and Arathan has to run. But I always thought it was interesting is because if it weren't for a certain other person's actions after he meets up with Luhane, it's entirely likely Arathan could have just doubled back and met back up with them. Because Luhane had already, used his thing to, shield Arathan and let them, the Lancers get confused and whatnot. But as we know, a certain someone's really, 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 really pissed. Does something very very,
Who would
very.
that be?
I
Is
wonder.
her name Lorender, I think, maybe?
Yeah.
Black hair.
A little vindictive.
Yeah, she swears vengeance and cast quite another evil spell, I would say. This G-ass over the soldier there that is a captain, right? And who basically won't let him give up the chase. So that was talk about taking away somebody's free will. There you go.
She's playing fast and loose with everybody's free will. Apparently, first Fion, then this guy. I'm sure there were a few other people along the way.
And I love the reasoning. The reasoning is that Arathon's boundless compassion has touched and uprooted her sense of inner alignment. How dare he? I just love that line.
Yeah, just the amount of hate though, like like just this passage alone. May you die alone, Arathan, Tears the Fallen. Let your accursed seed wither and your line finish heirless. May your field clansmen fall to woe while your bones become stripped by the crows and the peaks of the sky shields. And then she talks about, what she's, when she's, she's like, Erethan would suffer against their harrying onslaught. Erethan would suffer exhaustion and frostbite and privation. Lorinda meshed her dark seals like linked chain. Black hatred ruled her. She would destroy his music. All the bright gifts of his Cephalon heritage would be scared away into mindless animal instinct. And I'm like, wow, you're off the deep end, lady.
Just just common ill will, nothing big.
But she's also not that interesting to read at the moment because she has one note the whole way across. You know what I mean? She has a default position. She doesn't waver off. Unlike just about everybody else in the story at the moment, there's kind of like got the points where they're making good decisions, bad decisions, or they're flipping between certain things. So I find her, well, maybe aside from the time that she went to meet the new matriarch. And wondering what was going to happen. Now that was interesting in that point, but her general inner thoughts, I think we know what they are at the moment. They are pretty stationary and have been stationary for a book and a half now.
Yeah, it's like here she lets fly with her, vengeance and all, and it's like, well, wow, you're angry, okay, and she doesn't, it's like, but she lets her anger just eclipse everything. She doesn't really stop until you get to like chapter 4 to really, delve into, well, it's like, okay, what exactly did Moriel do?
Yeah.
What is going down?
Yeah. She doesn't want to let go of her 15 minutes,
Yeah.
It's interesting also, like I agree with you, Chris, that earlier at least her motive was ambition and he was standing in the way of what she wanted. Now it's just sheer vengeance and she's just being petty, really intensely petty, I think. Well, okay. So he did do so because she reasoned that Moriel betrayed her before Arathon escaped. So there was no way that this was going to end well for her either way. But she still blames him for that. So yeah, that twisted reasoning she applies bothers me every time. So we'll see. We'll see where
Well, I
this
think she's gone down a very similar path to Lysaea, I think, because they've both kind of been shown the light, so to speak. They've had the opportunity to change. They've seen the truth of events, and they've just gone, nope, I'm digging in. I'm digging my heels in, and I'm just going to keep on going. So in a way, they've followed these two very similar paths.
Yeah. What they both need is a good flush of the lane forces near a marker stone like Fionn got.
But well, to be fair with Lysaea, he had that vision at the Afsadet, and that still wasn't enough. Like, is anything going to be enough to change him? I don't know. That's one of the exciting things. Will he be changed by the end of this series? I really don't know.
And to Lorena's point, her hate and thing is actually a lot of self-hate. It's the worst type. She's not actually really, I mean, she is angry at Arathon and what he did, etc. But it's the fact that he was able to manipulate her so easily, and she was powerless to stop it. So like an awful lot of her anger is directed at herself, even though she won't admit that to herself at this stage.
Yeah. I agree. And I think it was the same last time too. And there was a brief moment of thought where also she felt that she realized that she was never going to get Arathon's affection, and she understood why Ilera was willing to betray her sisterhood principles, I guess, over Arathon. So that it's interesting because Lysair and Lyrenda both, they have these moments of insight and then they go and do the completely opposite thing that you're supposed to do with said insight.
Exactly. There's almost a sort of like perverse entertainment in it of like kind of wanting to see, like just how bad of a decision they're going to make. This is ever so slightly entertaining watching them just keep falling into these pitfalls.
Yeah.
Speaking of pitfalls, Arathon's murder of the
Oh,
pursuers.
Oh boy.
that was
Oh
pretty
boy, is
brutal.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was because they were a lot were wounded and stuff like that, and he was, putting them out of their misery, I guess. And then, but he didn't like it. Obviously, he was quite torn about it, but he went about it with brutal efficiency, and that was because he was shooting the survivors of the centaur, because the centaur came out and murdered a whole bunch of these guys, and because he was mad about the trespassing of these heedless humans, and then Arathon had to go out and finish him off in this brutal fashion, and that was really yeah, I mean, I love the detail of it. I love the detail of his wounds, and I love the what he had to do was it was just like it was a very powerful section in that was like in chapter 3, I think. Yeah, and very powerful section there.
Was it actually a centaur or was it Arathon's shadow?
I thought it was
Like,
the shadow. I have
I
to be
thought
honest.
it
Was it a
was.
shadow?
Illusion,
I
yeah.
thought it was.
like when one of the sorcerers in one of the other books kind of did the thing at the tower, but it wasn't real. It was a trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Me-
just an illusion. The
Oh, wow.
the Illitharis, an actual Perevian wouldn't have to kill them.
Yeah, I
They
think they just go mad, right? Or kind of like what happened with the men who invaded that forest. I'd imagine something
Mm.
like that would
there
happen.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yep.
Mm.
One of the most tragic parts of that for me was that this comes just after Arathon has this sort of fever-induced confrontation with everyone that he's killed, and the fact that Arathon just wants to die. He wants to, but he can't because he's bound by this blood oath that he's made, and then he's forced to confront all of these past horrors and then to do it again just after he's confronted that. Like, oh my goodness, like I hope he gets the death that he wants eventually, that he gets some peace, because it's just horrific to think about going through that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I like that it was a very powerful section, and this was the last line that if he had to do something like this again, he'd lose his sanity.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was the chapter or section ender, and I thought that was brilliant because it is a very momentous thought, and making it the end of the chapter made it that important somehow. Uh, is anyone else really nervous for Arathon's hand? Because do you think I don't know, do you guys think it will recover properly and he'll be able to play again and everything will be fine? Or will that be another source of pain for him?
Well, he's getting a master healer sent him.
Yeah.
So I mean, he has a chance there. I mean, for all of the toughness of reading that last section and the stuff that he's going through, it was another example of Arthur doesn't seem to have much hope or much going for me. It's like he's existing moment to moment, just survive the next day all the time, and there's nothing else goes with that. But then we get the news that actually Elara actually is whether she makes it or not. That's always the thing that's up for a question in this story. But there is the chance that these two will spend some quality time together and actually build some sort of relationship and build some sort of understanding of each other while going to somebody who's near death, send them a master healer.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
But who knows?
Yeah, there's a very romantic view of a book called Peril's Gate.
I'm not saying anything. I have nothing to say.
Yeah,
I would like it if that happens.
I did think as soon as I said it out loud. Here's another prediction that I've just made that almost certainly means that it won't happen.
Quality time. I did think it was. Oh, what? Oh yeah, that Luhain and everybody around Arathon knows that what's hurting him the most is his separation from Ilera in the first few chapters, and yeah, I I don't think I really uh it really struck home until these chapters that they really like each other. That because they were together for like 5 minutes, and then now the separation is costing them so much, which I I I see that now, and it's driving that home, I guess, that they do like each other very much. I know we were told that several times before, but I really understand it now.
Well, yeah, Alara had to choose basically love over hate when she was in front of the new, quote new prime, uh, and that was that audience that she had with the new prime, it, and Lorenda had to like sneak her way in there, uh, just to get all that bad news when she was listening in. Um, but and it was interesting because Lorenda was kind of held up a mirror in that meeting to her own failings because of how much of a backbone Alara had while dealing with the prime. Um, and when Alara finally left there, of course, the prime is like, yeah, it's all part of my plan, and uh, so it was just that was the was showed the depth of she had to choose love uh in order to continue on in her mission. And even when she left there, she was thinking of ways to plan around what the prime was planning for her. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that all plays out after this chapter.
Yet it seems as though Moriel's not in control anymore of Valera, certainly both by Valera's actions, but then also by Sephir's interference in that whole thing. Because I mean, there was a very key line. I had to read it 3 times just to make sure. But her life force is not tied to the Coriani anymore. It is tied to the Fellowship, which has always been one of the driving factors for her, is the fact that the Moriel could basically end her life at any stage, but actually it's now been passed to the hands of the Fellowship. And whether Alara knows that yet or not, that actually gives Moriel a lot less leverage than what she thought. Or maybe I picked that up wrong.
Yeah, maybe no. She's still oath sworn to the Coriani. The adept, keeps her from cleansing the crystal, which would have exposed that, she wasn't that they had done the whole thing with the longevity spell back in ships, and but she still made the swearing over the Skyron crystal. So even if she cleared hers, you know, Moriel Salidi still has that. So
yeah. So what was the deal with the putting the crystal into the salt water? And I was a little unclear what exactly happened there.
that crystal that was the one that Salidi gave her, and she cleared it, which clears any spells or anything that have been implanted inside it, because she was afraid that Salidi had planted some kind of trap inside the crystal. So she cleared it and erased everything, any records that it would have, so that if she used it, she wouldn't be triggering some hidden trap.
So, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
But that's all it was, though. She wasn't trying to It wasn't her own crystal then. It was a crystal given to
The
her by the
first
Prime?
one was the one that the Prime gave her, and then
Okay.
she was going to dunk her own, but then
Oh,
the
that's when the
showed up
Adept
and
stopped her. Right. Okay. All right. That's right. All right.
So didn't we see Keol kill some Koreani enchantresses by dunking their crystals in salt water?
That's right. Yeah.
But he used fire first.
Way
I
back in
see.
yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
he heated it with the flame and then dropped it in there, and it, the combo, what he did, stripped it.
Right.
And since it stripped all the things that crystal had that he stripped and shattered, and not just destroyed, all the woman's longevity spells were broken too. So she just aged like 300 years in an instant.
Got it. Okay. So he destroyed the crystal. It wasn't just the salt water, it was other things he did. Okay.
When he dunked it, it cleared everything that was in the crystal and caused it to shatter. And
Oh, I see. Okay.
so all the spells that were tied to the crystal, went boom. And the backlash caused her the lady to age and whatnot.
It was really interesting to see the Adepts come back into the story, though. That whole part of the world, I think, was again one of the most interesting and not yet explored that much parts of the story that we've had so far. Going back to Lysair's involvement when he's seen his visions, etc., and we see actually the role that they are playing and how important they are, especially to Sethvir's well-being at the moment, because we're all worried about Sethvir.
I think that indicates that some level of urgency about the world, that they're more involved now, and the sorcerers seem a little bit, antsy and upset, and they have a lot going on, and it looks like and it looks like the adepts are trying to fill in and help out with some of that stuff, and it just gives us all a bigger sense of urgency of events culminating and happening.
Yeah. It was interesting that they wouldn't interfere in stopping the Mistwraiths from returning, and because they think all creatures are equal in Ad's eyes, and so they won't participate in any sort of violence. That's really cool. Because Arathon, for all his he is compelled to, but he does participate in committing violence. So to have an organization that completely stays away from that, watching how they play into the story, I think that will be interesting.
Yep.
But also interesting to see how Sethvir has taken the smallest chink of suggestion and decided to act on it proactively, whereas up to this point where the Fellowship have been doing lots of things, they've been kind of hands off for an awful lot of it. Saying, "Oh, we really don't have justification there," and Sethvir's just basically went, "Actually, no, we had an opportunity here with her taking control of her own life. She sort of invited us in to interfere," which I think is a change in approach, certainly from Sethvir, rather than just watching.
If I remember correctly, they were involved in kind of like destroying the previous place they were on, and the sorcerers, and they don't want to do that again, so maybe they're kind of starting to think, okay, things are getting really bad again, maybe we should take a different tactic while still within the bounds of our compact, because they don't want it to end up like last time. That's like
did.
Yeah.
And what's up with Lysair and friends doing these blood rituals? These
blood rituals are always above board, aren't they? They're always there's something to be supported in.
In aid of the light,
Look, he's just keeping track of where Earthen's going. He's
That's it.
concerned for his brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is that the same blood that is it Luhain when he's looking at all the parallel events and a little bit into the future as well? He sees a stain of blood somewhere from a ritual. Is that the one that's being referenced? Because I was wondering whether it was something that we'd already seen before or if it's about to happen.
But I think his parallel events were events that were happening at the same time, weren't there? It wasn't that he could traverse time so much; it was that he could see things that were happening at the same time. So I hadn't thought of that actually, but
He was
that does raise a
outside
question.
space time, which was pretty cool. And at one point they go into space. He's kind of like in Alpine Tower, and he just kind of like Superman's out of the roof up into space.
I'm going to picture him dressed very differently the next scene he's in now, man.
That's funny. So speaking of across space-time, we found out a bit more about the spell that's used to hold the mystery, that we need someone on the other side of the veil and someone on like with physical presence. So because it extends across the veil, I imagine, is where people go when they die. Are we given to understand that? Did we get any more explanation than that?
Yeah, they need someone grounded physically and a spirit form, because that's how they cast it to begin with. It was like a Thundir and I don't know, Caradmon or Luhain, whichever one it was. It might have been Caradmon at the time who did the ward, and then and so they needed someone else to
Yeah.
since they're shorthanded, the car has to go help. So
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was interesting was I noticed a lot of reference to the mysteries as well as we get closer towards the halfway mark and heading towards the Song of the Mysteries.
Mm.
There are a few more references that kind of tantalizing us as to what the mysteries are.
Oh, elaborate.
Well, one of the things that I picked up on was early on, I think it's in chapter 1. So when Seth there, I wasn't entirely sure what he did, but this is what I noted down. So he went outside of space and time to create this form, and it was only once the mysteries had parted that it was enabled to be anchored in the real world. So it had to have the mysteries were involved somehow. It wasn't until they sort of gave some sort of assent that this thing could be grounded and brought from outside of space and time and then into the physical realm. It had to pass through the mysteries, whatever that is.
Was that the part when he was trying to help out us in there?
I think so.
Yeah, like there's like some fiends or some lava or something, and he was
It's right in at the end of
trying to help them up.
their part in chapter 1.
Delirium or whatever that part is.
I'm trying to find it here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's the end of near the end of chapter 1. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Missed it.
Yeah. We saw the Fellowship do a lot of cool magic in these chapters, right? I especially love the one with Cardamon where he basically collapses his identity and his self so that he can figure out what's going on on Marak, and what what rates are coming and so on and so forth. And then he goes chasing after them, which I think that's the conflict I'm most interested in at the moment. That and
Yeah.
Setri with the what he does with the Grim Ward is really cool too. And We haven't. Did we see any Asandir work?
Well, Sundeer, right at the end of chapter 1, shows up at a Kraken's Grimward and disperses the Eats and then takes over Sethvir's spell.
Right.
But
Oh,
can
okay.
we, have a, wow at Sethvir because he's still holding 6 or 7 Grimwards, steady. That we know if one of them bursts, like it's just going to start warping everything around it.
Yeah.
The very fabric of reality, and that's just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, I've noted down actually this. We really have this almost set of Chekhov's guns that are waiting to go, and I noted down a lot of them. So at the moment, my counting, so we've got Lysaea is headed in the direction that Arathon is running towards, and in the other direction behind him, he's being pursued from jail by these mage-driven soldiers who are so absolutely just stubborn in their pursuit that they've got these dogs that they've literally like cut out their tongues to keep them silent. Like they're so just intent in their purpose. There's the King's Drake, a Kraken, where his nightmares could be unleashed and warp reality, as you said. There's the Mistwraiths that are in Rockfall. There's the remaining Mistwraiths that are on Marek that are now seeing this red flashing beacon. Come here, guys. There's the Black Rose prophecy. The Cadrium have been unleashed. Lysaea's allies are using dark blood rituals and magic. Davian's awakened. We don't know if he's good or bad at the moment. And any one of these things could go wrong. And I just had this image of, like in a movie where somebody's like kind of maybe they're like leaving a bath over wrong or something, or there's a leak and they're trying to plug the leak, and then another one comes out, another one, and eventually there's like the final one, and it all comes flooding out. I'm just waiting for that last flood of, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? There's like 7 or 8 things there that every single one of them could go wrong, and it would be absolute chaos. Which I love. That's brilliant.
So, tell me if I noticed this incorrectly, but I think, and I like this about the series, that whatever the conflict is, that's what gets resolved. It doesn't get escalated further. So there are all these things that could go wrong, and multiple of them could go badly, for instance. But in the case where Karadmon, he has a thought to himself that the Wraiths cannot get hold of whatever he knows of the mysteries and his knowledge of whatever sorcery, right? The Wraiths cannot get a hold of that. I think that, so there's 2 ways that could go: that he's successful at not giving them his knowledge, or we could escalate it way further and have the Wraiths do get knowledge from Karadmon. And usually so far in this series, we've seen it resolve, like this conflict is already serious enough, and we'll resolve it right here, that Karadmon will just do an excellent job of not letting the Wraiths have his knowledge. I'm going to predict that it does not escalate further from there, which I would like very much, because then you escalate to a point where it feels almost impossible to come back from. But then when Janny does that, she does come back from it really well too. So have you guys noticed that the conflict stated on the page is what it is, and it doesn't escalate further typically through the series?
I haven't thought about that.
I would say it doesn't escalate, but it does. We do learn more, and so it's never that it grows bigger than what we're first told. It's more like, oh, we know more about this now. Oh, this is even worse than before. Not because it's got worse, but just because we know more and we're more aware of what's actually happening, and it gets more horrifying the more you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, we've had a conflict, with Elaine, with Lysaea's wife, and the conflict keeps changing in her case. Now, all of a sudden, she has proof. She was given proof of the letter that her the former wife was killed, And so what does she do with that? Her conflict before was just, trying to, uh, being on, not being paying attention to by Lysair, and then of course her conflict was dealing with Cerebel, and so now this conflict keeps changing, and her situation just seems to be getting worse. And the old conflicts she had aren't as relevant, or
Mm.
and now she's got this new one, and so and that's like a minor storyline compared to the some of the other stuff, but it's still all tied in and still all important. So it's pretty cool.
On that point, like the whole revealing that Talith was killed, Sarah doesn't know that. To me, it's a hell of a gambit to play, because his reaction to that news is unknown. Like, Cerebel's obviously trying to manipulate Elaine and kind of get her to shun away. But if Elaine gets the word out and it gets to Lysair, that's a hell of a risk to be playing with, because
it is a risk. He's playing this game where he seems like, I'm gonna scare her so bad she's not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's gonna work or not. I'm kind of hoping that Elaine shows us and surprises us and shows us something that we some sterner stuff, and then we'll see, but I think that's what he thinks, because this guy Cerebel seems to be a little full of himself anyways.
Well, he does.
And so that's the game there. I found it interesting on another note that he's actually able to talk to the other priests in their heads or whatever, other than just talking to Lysair. So that was a little bit of information that was just kind of snuck in there. And another little bit of information that was snuck in was the jewels the Coriani have are not mined on a para.
Yeah.
It's just a little thing snuck in there. I'm like, oh, that's gonna come into port later. That's gonna come into play. If it hasn't already, and we just skipped over it or something.
But we weren't just given that; we were given that alongside the context that that's why Zephyr can't, or what Zephyr's control over things are things that are only of that world, etc.
So all these little tidbits that are like, is that important?
Yeah, and the other big tip that was given, obviously, that Kevor, actually might be a mage.
He might be.
He might be a mage. And actually, I'd never even considered that. What a fool I was, because that's how genetics works and stuff. But then, if I'd have predicted it, it wouldn't happen. So he'd have been unlucky.
I'm reading so closely now. I sort of every bird that comes along, I sort of think, is that Davian? Is that Davian?
Wait, does he not stick to eagles? Is he?
No, I know, but still in my mind, I sort of ignore that and go, "Oh, this could be Davian watching every time."
There was an eagle that Arathon spotted at least once, right?
Yes.
Yep.
He's in one of the end sort of little paragraphs, isn't he? I think.
Yeah.
But knowing Janny about the way we do, that could be just her fucking with you.
Yeah.
Look, I think if I was in Janny's position, I'd be going, I just gotta put an eagle in this thing just because.
Yeah.
And make it disappear when it gets closer.
Yeah, like a spider on the wall. You stare at it doesn't move, look away for a second, you look back, it's gone. And you think that's Davian. There you go.
Davian's the spider.
And then it's on a web behind you.
Thanks, Jared, for that.
Yeah, it's right there. You don't see it.
Oh, God.
Oh, wait. What else happened in these books, in these chapters? Sorry.
So much happens. So much happens in these number of chapters. It's like all-encompassing. Cerebel seems dangerous, though. I think while he is maybe taking a risk there. He seems like he is in control of himself in a way that Lorenda was never in the last book, if you know what I mean. For all her careful planning, she doesn't seem to be operating on the same level as Sarabelle, in terms of like the kind of forethought and what he thinks is going to happen and what is at risk of happening.
Which is kind of odd because we don't know much about his upbringing or training or past or anything like that.
That's right.
Lorenda, we know, had been through all these 8 levels of training and stuff like that, that the Coriani go through. And we really don't know much about Sarabald and what kind of past and training he's had. And I'm still a little I still don't quite understand how he obviously he has some sort of magical talent, but how it's manifesting and how it's tied into Lysaea, I'm not 100% sure about, and I'm hoping to get more explanation, or maybe somebody can explain it to me if we've already seen it somewhere. But I'm hoping to get more explanation on that in his story so we understand a bit more where he's coming from.
Yeah. It was interesting that he was actively jealous of the prince. Kevor is his name. Yeah. When he took over, and so he does want power, and I guess he's also manipulating Lysaea to a certain extent, it seems like.
But he's threatened by Kevor, obviously, especially after what happened at the end of Grand Conspiracy. But he is actively plotting to kill him, or they put him in a position where he'd be killed, which again is a hell of a risk for a man that needed he doesn't have multiple kids, Lysaea, as it turns out. He just has the one heir.
Yep.
Again, given the Celested line is all about justice, 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 this seems a hell of a gambit.
Yeah, he's up to a lot of stuff, and it really makes me wonder what his game is. What is because it seems like he worships Lysaea too at the same time. So, but he's like worshiping him to the point of going against anything that Lysaea might be related to, whether Lysaea wants to be related to that or not. And so it's a kind of it's a poisonous relationship, really. But I'm not sure the level of how much Lysaea knows that. We haven't really seen that part into his head, I guess, yet.
Yeah. So lots of interesting threads to track. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we should talk about, but I feel like we covered it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time to do outros. So, I wanted to ask about this, but we in the what's the other thing I do? Second Apocalypse discussions at the end we do quotes. So if you guys have anything that you'd like to read out, and any particular lines or paragraphs that you found interesting. I bet Jimmy Pro has a bunch. Yeah, sorry for throwing it out randomly.
I do have one. I'm going to restate. I'll do my outro and read this out. Give people a bit of a chance. So I'm going to repeat the line that I was talking about earlier on in terms of how Allura's her life blood or her life has been changed. Yeah. So my name's Chris Mullen, Chronicle Chris YouTube channel, also on the Patreon forums. But the adept shook her head. Rest easy, no. The warden's desire was met. One of the Brotherhood went to Allura. Her spell quartz has been sent to her PRS uncleared. End quote. Which meant the order was not yet the wiser for the fact the imprinted longevity bindings on the enchantress's life had been supplanted by fellowship crafting.
Nice. Is that referring to the thing that it wasn't Trey? I guess it was Luhain. Did when Ilera was given the longevity spell, he came and interfered. He said, "I can make this less painful for you."
Mm.
Is that all that's referring to, or do you think there's more to that?
Well, again, I think the important thing for me is the fact that Moriel doesn't know about it.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
thinks she is in control, and I'm not sure Alera doesn't know about it either, because she thinks that Moriel can basically end her life at a moment's notice, but it's been supplanted. It's been replaced
Yeah.
by the Fellowship in some way, which changes the power balance for Alera specifically. And if she knew about it, it would change it even more in a lot of ways. So I
Yeah,
thought that was a
makes
very
sense.
important point to make.
Makes sense.
Well, I have I'm Jared, Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and page chewing aficionado. My quote is never cast off useful tools. And that was the new Prime. Kind of explaining things in a what's the word I'm looking for? In a manner to Lorenda that like she's explaining things to a child,
Yeah, yeah. I like that.
My name's Matt, also known as Miggins. You can find me over at Twitter at Hobbit Hole Books, and soon starting a podcast. More on that in the future. Yes, very exciting. My quote, I actually noted which page it was on. So I love this quote. I think it really gives a good sense of the vastness and the deep of space. So, enveloped by the hostile cold of deep vacuum, alone with the whisper-thin chime of the stars, Caradmon drew himself inward. I just love that description of
Yeah.
space. It's very
Incredible.
evocative.
Yeah.
nice.
I love that. Yeah. Chibipo.
I'm Chibi-Po. I can be found on Page Chewing and on Twitter. Do I have a quote? Let me see. There are so many. All right. Still a little bit of stuff, So you're not fighting. Fiona scribbled back upright, humiliated and stressed by the blazing pain of a pulled hamstring. Damn you to Cithair's bleakest of pits. You give me no contest at all. You wanted to fight, said Prince Arathon, equivocal. I promised you one chance to test me. The car by the mill caught his breath as the scalding invective struck home. I never once gave my word I'd strike back to cause harm, Rithane's prince added, spitefully reasonable. Then, as the goatherd hammered back in offense, he parried, sidestepped, and lagged a half beat to stoop and fling a snatched snowclod. So far, boy, you haven't shown me the least little cause to feel threatened.
Very nice. Cool. I guess I'll go next. I was looking through my quotes to see which one. There are so many, but I guess I'll do the one about the Cathdane. And now I lost it. Okay, here we are. You can find me on the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, on the podcast Speculative Speculations, and haunting the page chewing forums all the time. The quote I have is, jolted to gaping embarrassment, Genza swept to one knee. Her gesture affected no woman's courtesy, but the humility a future Cathdane must show to acknowledge the given hierarchy of old law. Now, the authority of a fellowship charter granted her Svalin liege his right to crown rule in Rathane.
Nice.
Nice.
All right. So we'll see everyone in 2 weeks from now, reading the next 3 to 4 chapters. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Bye.